Yeah, so let's get into the blanks. Blanks are annoying. Everybody knows that. Usually they come up a little later in the season, but we got some pretty big blanks game week one. We got both Manchester clubs, United and City are blanking, as well as Burnley and Aston Villa. So let's kind of talk about how we're handling that game week one blank. That's tough because a lot of people are counting on United and City assets. Probably not as much for Burnley and Villa, but still, there's still some good players on those clubs as well. So, Gash, why don't you kind of speak about your plan for handling the game week one blanks and yeah, well, take it away.
Sure. So I have actually two players blanking in the first game week on my team. I have Mason Greenwood and Taylor on the bench. And my thinking behind that is kind of, I definitely want, certain United and City assets and even, a Burnley defender that I have now. And I didn't want to spend too many free transfers making them or after a few game weeks or even, taking a hit that early in the season. And the way I look at it, at least, yes, there is some value being left on the bench for game week one for me, but I would rather have that than have to spend the money or the transfers to do it. I think that I'm going to have a hard enough time getting other City assets or other United assets early in the season. So I'd rather kind of play it safe almost and have these the two players at least that I picked on my team already, rather than worrying about planning transfers too far in advance than something happening that screws up my plans anyway. So I'd rather it's kind of like the safety net type thing for me.
Do you have like one particular transfer in mind that you want to make after the first game week or after the second game week?
Yeah, I mean, I know I want KDB somewhere in my team from early on in the season. I haven't decided if that's before game week 2 or before game week 3 yet, and that's something that's going to might change in my head with the price rises as well. And then I want Bruno Fernandes. I don't think right now I'm going to be able to fit him in. But then I could always bring in someone like Martial if Werner's not doing too well, and I could easily it's an easy switch to make since Martial is $500,000 cheaper.
Yeah.
So I kind of have a couple in mind, but maybe nothing super set.
Yeah, the fantasy Premier League gods are throwing us a big challenge right at week one.
Yep.
A lot of people getting screwed over by this. Taz, how are you dealing with it?
So I think what the strategy Gash went with having Greenwood on your bench is the only viable one in terms of owning those players and keeping them on your bench. I feel like with Greenwood at 7.5, that's the only like price point where it's okay. You have the Brilliant defender 4.5, which isn't that much money wasted because you just have another 4.5 defender. So if anything, you're just saving yourself the transfer. But I believe I was thinking about it too, having Greenwood, but I'm just not set on his underlying numbers, and I think I'd rather see. For me, it's more of like seeing Son and Werner how they work out, and then my plan is I can either downgrade Werner to Martial, who I think will have a splendid season, or upgrade Son to Rashford, which I think is another solid option. But yeah, I think the best options would be just to like save that money. If people are benching your KDBs, Bruno Fernandes's on the bench, I feel like that's a lot of money early on. That's you can just simply a big strategy I see is people like so you just build your team with whatever player you want. So let's say you do want to own Martial, that game week 2, you just build your team that way, and then just transfer Martial just before the game week 1 deadline. Just instead of Martial, you pick up an Ings or a Jimenez, and then just take that one. You gotta use up that one transfer after game week 1 you'll have for it. So I think that's the other good strategy to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. A good point too about leaving too much on the bench. I agree that like Greenwood is probably like Greenwood or Foden from City. I would feel comfortable leaving on the bench for game week 1, but anything above that value is just too many wasted funds in my mind. C4, how you dealing with the big blank?
So I think this kind of plays into my strategy with having 2 premium strikers, having 2 premium midfielders, then having a more set back line. Is I didn't want to waste transfers in those first 3-4 game weeks on defenders. I wanted to have those all allocated to midfielders and attackers to try and fit in City and United players where appropriate. And so I think my strategy at least is not considering a transfer at minimum until after game week 2, until Arsenal start having that tough stretch of fixtures. Although if Aubameyang does go off in both games, I think I can see myself riding it out, considering City's fixtures aren't the best to kick off the season. Where I'm more so looking now in terms of getting a United asset is Werner. I think the move down to Martial is really easy to make, and it makes a lot of sense. And then using that other 0.5 to strengthen perhaps my back line with upgrading one of my 4.0s to Burnley defender once the season kicks off, they no longer have a blank.